Good morning and welcome back to another story time online. Hope you've been enjoying them with us. Today we're going to read a book called Jingle the Brass, which features a lot of railroad lingo or phrases, a lot of which we don't really know today. So the book has actually provided a glossary in the back, and I will definitely be referring to it because I cannot keep all of it straight in my head. But we're going to try and use context clues or looking at maybe what's going on in the picture, what's going on in the sentence to try and figure out maybe what some of these really strange or just not common phrases actually mean before we try and use the glossary in the back. So this might be a little bit tough, but we'll get through it together. And hopefully we'll figure out what Jingle the Brass really means. Maybe we can get a hint from this cover here before we get started. So Jingle the Brass, maybe it has something reference to the young boy here and the train conductor. He's pulling on the bell. And I know that bells sometimes during this period are made of brass or some kind of metal. So, and they kind of make a jingle sound, just like with the holidays. If you celebrate Christmas or are familiar with Christmas tunes, you know there is a song called Jingle Bells. So, and they make the sort of jingly or tingly sound. So I'm guessing that Jingle the Brass just means make the train bell sound. That is just a guess. Do you agree with me? Say so. If not, maybe you have another idea of what that means. Okay, Jingle the Brass. This book is by Patricia Newman and pictures by Michael Chesworth. Okay, so this book follows this young boy, but we're going to start the book with actually this conductor talking to the young boy. Morning, I've been waiting here for you. Pull up a stool and put on the nose bag with me while I finish my breakfast. I like my eggs with headlights, but you'd like scrambled. Just order wreck on the main line. Ruby there will know what you mean. Better add some whitewash to that. A youngin' like you needs milk. Whew, all right, that was a lot in there. And I don't know if you caught some of those phrases, but there's some things that I have never heard before. So let's see if we can use some context clues and some of what's going on in here to figure out maybe what some of these words mean. All right, so put on the nose bag with me. I don't think I've ever heard that phrase before, but I do know that horses, when they're feeding, actually have a bag that goes around their face sometimes. And they call that a nose bag. So I'm guessing he may be asking him to eat with him. And he says he likes his eggs with headlights. Now, I don't think he actually means he likes to eat them with headlights, because I don't think that would be very good, and that would probably hurt your teeth. But I'm guessing there are a type of eggs right here. They look like they are what we call sunny side up, which means the white part of the egg is on the bottom, and then the yolk or the yellow part is on the top. And I guess they kind of look like headlights, don't they? So I'm guessing that is another phrase for eggs sunny side up. And he also gave us a clue. So he guessed that this young boy probably likes his eggs scrambled, as do I. And he just said, instead of ordering them scrambled, you want to call them wreck on the main line. Which probably means that they're just kind of like all, I don't want to say mushy, but just kind of all messed up. Or in a different state than, in a less neat state than maybe he would consider eggs over easy. And then he also says, add some whitewash to that. I don't think, so whitewash is another word for paint, white paint. People would paint fences often with whitewash or a white color. But I think he also gives another clue that whitewash also means milk. So he basically said to the young child to order scrambled eggs and milk, which they call wreck on the main line, and add whitewash. Whew, I think that's what it is. Let's see if we are correct. And I think we were. Okay, whitewash is milk, wreck on the main line is scrambled eggs, and the eggs with headlights is eggs sunny side up, and put on the nose bag is to eat. So we're correct. All right, welcome to the yard. This straight track running through the middle is a ladder. See these cars lined up on the spur track? That's our train. All she needs is an engine. And we're fixing to get one out of the roundhouse, see? Over there, beyond the water tower. Okay, so luckily, this book has provided us with some words. So they tell us that sometimes the track is called the ladder. Why do you think the track might be called the ladder? What does a ladder look like? So usually a ladder has sort of two straight supports or beams and then some slats or some wood that runs across so that you can easily step or climb up to wherever you need to go. And it does kind of look like a train track. So that's another phrase, I think, for a train track. And he is also asking us to look at the spur track. So these are all the train cars lined up. But what the train actually needs to run is an engine, which I think we've learned a little bit about in previous books. But we're going to continue reinforcing that with this one. And he says it's right by the water tower. And it needs to come up to the roundhouse to be able to come over and connect back to this rest of the train cars. So there's the roundhouse. Kind of does look a little round. Okay, so I think we figured that out. This here is my old hog, number 417. I sure do love her, but sometimes she's an ornery old gal. Climb aboard and ride the point. Okay, there's a lot more words in here. So ornery is a word that you probably not have come across. Just might mean disgruntled or just not always in a good mood. So it could be just that sometimes this train might act up and not run properly. Now, old hog, let's look up what that means because I don't really think I can defer from the context clues. And let's see. So hog is engine. And I'm just going to look down. Engineers are also called hoggers. So I don't have enough context clue yet. I guess maybe because they eat or consume coal to make them run. And we know that hogs or pigs like to eat lots of scraps and things to make them run. So maybe that's why engine is called a hog. And let's see, ride to the point. Just basically means to ride in a locomotive, which was a little hard to confer from that sentence, but there we go. Okay, meet Joe, my ash cat. He keeps the fire burning, so this old hog will have enough steam to get us where we're going. She's so temperamental, which is similar to kind of what we were saying previously with the word ornery. Just some days might work, some days might not. Watch Joe spoon feed black diamonds into her firebox. That coal will glow red hot. Okay, so we're learning a little bit about what's in the engine, which we know is coal. Now, he also said black diamonds. Do you think they're actually putting diamonds in here? Don't you think that might be a little expensive? So maybe because coal is valuable because it keeps this train running, they call them black diamonds. And coal will get hot. And sometimes coal, because of the material it is, like a stone, if you ever crush stone or gravel, you know it can be a little bit dusty or maybe ashy. So they might call him an ash cat just because he's around things that might get him a little bit dusty or ashy. So let's just make sure we were right with these things. Okay, an ash cat is a locomotive fireman who stokes the fire so the water will boil and make steam. And basically black diamonds is coal. So he has a very important job because without steam, without the fire going, the train cannot run. The roundhouse boss says it's time to pull out onto the merry-go-rounds. Wave to Mabel, the merry-go-round operator. She'll line us up with the outbound track so we can hitch up our train. Okay, so I don't think this is a merry-go-round. I don't know if you've ever been one or have seen one, but usually it's a round circle that you go around and you sit on really neat animals and they go up and down sometimes. So my guess is because this goes around in a circle, not necessarily with animals, that is why it is called a merry-go-round. And let's see if we were correct at surmising that. Okay. Merry-go-round, the turntable in front of the roundhouse. That's right. And there's our ash cat, the guy who stokes the coal. Before we hitch up, let's stop and give her a drink. She sure is thirsty. Now, do we think this part of the train actually is thirsty? Do you think it went to the engineer or the ash cat and said, I really need a drink? I think that that's their way of just saying, we need to fill up the train car. And let's just see if we're correct. And I don't think they have this in here, but we can surmise that the train is thirsty just because it needs water to make steam. We got ourselves a jigger today. That's the heaviest train allowed on the line. Conductor says we've got grain in the hoppers and oil in the can. Okay, so here is, we're gonna start backwards. So oil in the can. So do we think this is a can? A can basically is a container to hold some sort of liquid, usually. If you think of like a soda can or an oil can, if you have something for a car, any sort of type of can. So I think they're just saying that this is a container that holds oil, but in a more fun way, they call it a can. A hopper is basically a container that holds sort of grain or other types of materials that need to be transported. And let's see. So we know that the heaviest train on the track is a jigger, but we don't quite know more about that because they don't give us enough clues. It's just the heaviest train allowed on the main line. Okay, and they keep fruit and vegetables in the reefer, which I think is just another way of calling a train car. We're even carrying honest-to-goodness cowboys in the caboose. Them clover pickers will drive the cattle on and off the livestock cars. So clover pickers, they're telling us, is another name for cowboys. My ticker says it's time to shove off. Jingle the brass to let the real brakeman know we're leaving the station. Conductor says we're over a mile long today. Okay, so let's go to here. So Jingle the Brass, which is the title of this book, we were correct. So he's telling him to jingle the brass or make the bell go to sound what needs to let everyone know that they're going. My ticker says it's time to shove off. My guess is a ticker is probably his watch or his pocket watch. A lot of trains and conductors and engineers would have watches on them just to make sure they're running on time. If they're transporting goods or people, that's really important that they keep to the schedule. And over a mile long today, we're gonna need to look that up. Okay, so ticker is a railroader's pocket watch. And let's see. Over a mile long, I guess they do not have this in the definitions. But I am guessing it just means start going maybe a little further than usual today. That semaphore there says to slow down and proceed with caution. Must be something on the tracks up ahead. Old hoggers like me are called eagle eyes because we have to keep a sharp eye out for anything in our way. Don't want a cornfield meet now, do we? What's a cornfield meet, you say? Well, that's a head-on train wreck. Okay, and they even give us a little clue here as to what a cornfield meet really is. So two trains coming together, which you do not want to happen because that means that there's a wreck. And over here, they give us some little signals as to show what the semaphore does, which is that sort of mechanical device right there. So because it's leaning sort of at an angle, it's telling them to be caution, to use caution. And then he's saying sometimes a nickname for him is an eagle eye because they have to really keep a sharp eye out. And eagles fly up in the sky and they are looking for food and for prey and places to perch and land, and they have to keep a sharp eye out. So that is basically what they're saying. All right, looks like we got ourselves some dandy dancers fixing up a bit of track. Lean out the window. Can you hear them singing? Dandy dancers. So they are basically people who are, looks like, fixing, repairing, and building track. Dandy dancers, maybe it means it's just a way of saying, you know, They keep to a rhythm, they sing songs. There is sort of a dance about maybe how they put things on the track or repair it. So that is maybe my guess as to why they were called some sort of dancer. And let's see if they give us a definition here in the back. Dandy dancers, basically track workers. Usually we don't allow passengers on a freight train. Freight train is basically a type of train that transports goods, materials, sometimes animals, because they have a specific purpose. They're not maybe necessarily stopping at the same places they would for where passengers would stop. So usually we don't allow passengers on a freight train, but you watch as we approach this here trestle. See them hobos climbing on the hill and nailing her on the fly? The railroad bulls will arrest them for sure. The bulls are riding this train undercover today, hiding in the boxcars. All right, there's quite a bit to unpack here. So let's start in the back. So he mentioned railroad bulls will arrest them. So who do we know usually arrests people? Or what is that word usually associated with? Usually policemen. And if you look in this picture, these policemen, what they look like policemen, usually they're in blue. And it looks like they're on the train kind of looking around, kicking off people that maybe aren't supposed to be there. And they use a phrase called hobos, which really isn't a nice phrase. Just means that people that are maybe down on their luck, that live outside, out in the woods, or live somewhere by the train so that they can take advantage of its services. And you can see where they are and that they're trying to get on the train. And we know that this train really isn't meant for passengers. All right, so we learned the word semaphore. So that was sort of the device that signaled whether a train should go, stop, or use caution. A semaphore tells me to pick up new orders on the fly. Old Joe here, our hash cat, or the guy that shovels the coal to make the train go, sticks his arm out and hooks it through a hoop while the train is moving. He grabs our flimsies, typed out all nice and neat. Watch him now. Be sure he doesn't fumble the hoop. Okay, so he is grabbing what looks like a bag. And my guess is this is what he's trying to grab. So it says that he's trying to hook his arm up through the hoop while the train is moving and grabs our flimsies, typed out all nice. So I'm guessing there maybe is some information here in this bag. It's called a flimsy, maybe because the bag is made of material that maybe isn't as rigid as maybe some other type of material. So let's see. And fumble the hoop probably just means let's hope he doesn't miss getting it. Okay, fumble the hoop. New train orders were attached to hoop and held up for the fireman along a moving train. The fireman was supposed to hook his arm through the hoop and bring the orders aboard. If the fireman missed, he fumbled the hoop. And flimsies are orders typed out on extremely thin paper. So I was close. The track curves this way and that for the next few miles. Look behind us. The brakemen are riding out to inspect each car for sticking brakes. The curves give them a good view. Okay, so we see the brakemen, and it looks like they say inspect. So they're obviously looking out for something, maybe to make a repair, and you can see that they have some tools in their back pockets. And let's see if sticking the brakes is a particular phrase. And it isn't, but basically I just think it means that they look out and make sure that the train is working and all the different cars are doing okay. There's a tunnel up ahead, but don't worry about the brakemen on top. They know what to do. See those telltales hanging in front of the tunnel? When brakemen feel those ropes brush against their back, they hit the deck until we're clear of the tunnel. Okay, so they call them telltales, which I think they're referring to these pieces of rope that are hanging down, and it looks like they hit them on the back, and that gives them a signal to know that they just need to crouch down until they get through the tunnel or find somewhere else to go. But let's just check in the back of the book. And yes, our books are pretty well loved, so sometimes they're a little dirty or sometimes the pages are ripped out. So telltales, dangling ropes hanging in front of a tunnel, a reminder to brakemen on top of the train to duck their heads at the tunnel entrance. Okay. So we got cut off a little bit at the end. Apparently I talk a little bit too much and our recordings only go up to 20 minutes. And there's quite a bit to unpack in these books with all these different, these lingo and phrases. So I just want to follow up. We have only about 3 more pages to go. Okay. So our new orders say to pull off the main line at this here siding and sit in the hole while a passenger train rolls by. Nothing I hate more than lying dead. So we know they just grabbed those orders, or flimsies, because the paper is so thin. And so they're told to pull off the main line, so pull off the main track is my guess. And this here siding. And I'm guessing it's just maybe a little spot that they can pull off safely while this passenger train right here rolls by. So we don't have a corn meat. I believe that was the phrase. Let me double check. Cornfield meat. That's what it was. So head-on collision. So they don't want a cornfield meat. So they're going to pull off and let this passenger train roll by. And he says, nothing I hate more than lying dead. Now, I don't think he wants to die, or I don't think he's dying, but my guess is they are stuck standing here, standing still. They can't really do anything. And so them, it maybe almost feels like they're dead because they can't really do much. So let's just see if we got that right. Lying dead. Lying dead at a complete stop. And the siding means just a piece of track used by trains to get off the main line and out of the way of a faster train. Ooh-wee! Look at all that varnish speeding by. If you were on that plush, you could sleep in the snoozer and put on the nose bag in the diner. So let's go backwards. Put on the nose bag. Remember we learned what that meant sort of right in the beginning of the book? Essentially means to eat. And they have a dining car. And I think we can get some other clues maybe about some of the other things that they mention here in this sentence about what's maybe on a passenger car that he's talking about. So if you were on the plush, you could sleep in the snoozer. So plush is kind of a word that might mean comfort or something that's cuddly or soft as compared to, so on the plush, definitely a passenger train is made for passengers. It's made for their comfort. As you can see here, there's a place for them to sit. Looks like really nice seats, place for them to eat, and a place for them to sleep. And all that looks kind of nice and luxurious as compared to a freight train or a train that is meant to bring goods from one place to another. They're not carrying passengers, as we learned, so they're not really thinking about passenger comfort. So that's maybe why it's called on the plush. And to sleep in the snoozer, may know to snooze basically means to fall asleep. So calling a place where you would sleep a snoozer seems my best guess to me, especially I have a picture of someone laying in bed. And look at all that varnish speeding by. So varnish is another word for paint, essentially, or a type of paint. And I'm pretty sure that passenger trains are meant to look very beautiful or look very nice. And they're probably usually painted well versus this kind of train, which really isn't meant to look beautiful. It's just meant to do and to serve a purpose. So let's see if we got all of that right. Varnish. Passenger cars. The first passenger cars were highly lacquered or painted to make them shine. Then on the plush is to ride in a passenger train, also on the velvet. Velvet is sort of a luxurious, soft fabric, if you've never felt it before. Sleep in the snoozer. So snoozer is a car with sleeping compartments. So I think we got those right. We're on our way again. I love the wind in my face. Stick your head out the window. The rods are flashing now. So we can see that a lot of movement is happening here. So that means the train has probably picked up speed again and is going right along. And he's telling the young boy to look out the window and see the rods flashing. So my guess is maybe it's the train tracks. Rods are usually like just a piece of metal or something. And so maybe it's in reference to just seeing these kind of flying by and maybe they look a particular way. So let's see if my assumption was correct. Rods are flashing. The rods drive the wheels of a locomotive. The faster they move, the faster the engine goes. When the rods are flashing, the train is moving very fast. If the engineer leans out far enough out the window in the cab, he can actually see the rods flashing. They're going right by. So I guess they're talking right about that with the track. Seems like we're only just getting started again, but we need to stop in the next station. Joe and I will treat you to a donut at Sally's Hash House. Best rolling stock on the line. Eh, Joe? So if you look over here, you get a little glimpse of Sally's Donut or Hash House. And best rolling stock on the line. So my guess is maybe they have the best donuts or snacks as a train comes by. Rolling stock gives me the impression that they're definitely talking about donuts, because donuts, as we know, are kind of round shaped. And I'm sure if you got them going, they'd probably roll right on by. So let's see if we got that correct. Rolling stock is donuts. And a hash house is basically a railroad lunchroom or restaurant. It's a place where you can get food or hash. This is the end of the line for you, pal. Thanks for the company. I've got to work a little longer, but your trick is up. Time for you to pull a pin and go home. That westbound train is dead heading back to the station. See all the empty cars? Mighty fine knowing you. Your conductor's calling. Best be on your way. Okay, so this is our last page and last little bit of information to unpack. So let's see if we can figure it out together. So this is the end of the line for you, which I think just means the end of his journey. If you ever look at a line or draw a line, you know it only goes to a certain point and then it's done. So my guess is it's the end of his time on the train with his friends. He says, also, your trick is up. So my guess, maybe his time or his time on the train is up. So let's see if we're right. So a trick is a railroad worker's shift. And end of the line. Let's see if they have done that, but my guess is just means the end of your time. Pull the pin is to quit work and go home, which he's telling him to pull the pin, just go home. And the westbound train is dead heading back to the station. And he gives us a hint, see all the empty cars? So that means they're done with what they needed to transport, or take somewhere, so all of the supplies and materials that they transport on the train have been taken off. And they're deadheading, which probably means they're probably just going straight back to where they need to go. And deadheading basically means an empty train car is being transported to another station. A railroad worker who finishes his shift at one station and rides back home kind of can go on a free pass. So that's what this gentleman's doing. And that concludes our book. And you can see here's all the dictionary or definitions of the different lingo that was featured in this book. So I will try and get this up with this video so you can review some of these words, maybe add them to your vocabulary, maybe think about words that you use in everyday life, maybe with your family or with your friends that maybe no one else has that phrase for. I know my family uses something. So he mentions eggs with headlights, so eggs sunny side up. My family, we call them dippy eggs, and that's because we take oftentimes bread or toast that we have with them and dip them right into the egg yolk. Not necessarily a family thing, but it's a regional thing of where I'm from in Pennsylvania. So maybe think about some different phrases or words that you use that maybe other people don't use, but it's just a clever way of rephrasing some things in your life to make life a little interesting and maybe feel bonded with certain people. So that's my assumption as to why people on railroads and other areas of life use some interesting phrases. Okay, well, it's time for me to deadhead back to work, and I will see you all tomorrow.